Year 3 of the ULM rebuild, and our biggest goal this season is to make it to the conference championship and win. Last season, we did not make it because of Southern Miss. They ended up going 12-0, making it to the playoff, where they got blown out by Georgia. So we're kind of looking to do the same this season. And this might be the roster to do it as far as team ratings go. We do have two quarterbacks on the roster who are looking pretty good. We've got Drew Overton, who's an 84 overall, but we've got our starter from last year, Dan Mahan, who had a really great season for us. So there's definitely going to be some quarterback battling going on during the season, just because we want to see if it's worth it to start Drew Overton or if Dan Mahan should continue to be the starter. He did have a really great season last year. He's also got 88 speed, 89 acceleration, 91 agility. So he's great at running the ball, and I think he's good enough to win in the Sun Belt. But Drew Overton is far and away a better passer than Dan Mahan. He's got 94 throw power, and his accuracy stats are better. But for the first game of the season, we are going to roll out with Dan Mahan against the Tulane Green Wave. They are rated very similarly to us, so I'm not really scared about needing to have a better overall quarterback against them, but they are in the AAC. And as you can see, our offense really has no trouble going downfield and scoring this touchdown here. And it's Dan Mahan's ability to escape the pocket and extend plays that makes me really want to keep him at quarterback, because this was just a great throw on the run to Deshaun Ford. And Tremaine Ware, our backup running back with a little bit more speed than Deshaun Ford, gets it in for a touchdown. And on our next drive, Dan Mahan throws it out of a sack down the field to Jelani Watkins. And if Ashton Bethel-Roman would have put up a block here, he's going in for a touchdown, but he doesn't. So it's just a big gain. So transfer tight end Dominic DeLuca finishes the job and gets a touchdown for us. And after this field goal on our next drive, we're currently up 17 against Tulane. Dan Mahan must have heard me talking about there being a quarterback battle, because he continues to escape the pocket, make big plays downfield, which is exactly why I want to keep him at quarterback. With 3 minutes left, Deshaun Ford goes in for a touchdown, and we beat the Tulane Green Wave 31-7 in their home stadium in New Orleans. The plan against FCS West is to have Dan Mahan and Drew Overton split reps. So Dan Mahan will play the first quarter, Drew Overton will play the second. And so far in the first quarter, Dan Mahan looks like he's struggling out there after having a great game against Tulane. And our kicker was struggling too, so on this next play, Dan Mahan knows he's got to do it himself. So he takes off, he jukes a guy out, he starts to stiff arm a guy, but he brings the ball up to the 44-yard line. And if he keeps having drives like this, he will for sure be our starter. And just a side note, because I didn't mention this earlier, I chose FCS West as our FCS game to play because they have the same color scheme as Northwestern State University in Natchitoches, Louisiana. Sorry to cut myself off. Do you see this absolute bomb that Drew Overton just threw? So I thought it'd be fun to have the ULM Warhawks basically play an in-state school, so that's kind of where I was going with that. But back to Drew Overton, this dude is just slinging it out there. I mean, he's fitting it into tight windows. He's really making this quarterback battle a lot harder on me than it needs to be. But he decides to make it a little bit easier on me and throws it into double coverage, resulting in a pick. And with 55 seconds in the half, we really get to see how Drew Overton plays under pressure. He kind of overthrows Jelani Watkins on this play, but again, Jelani Watkins has 99 speed, 99 acceleration. He goes up and gets it. And on this play, Drew Overton hits Ashton Bethel-Roman on a crosser to get the touchdown before the half. So starting the third quarter up big, we decide to give Deshaun Ford some carries because he really hasn't been featured that much in this game. And as soon as we start giving him carries, he just starts bringing it downfield himself. He doesn't need anyone else to help him. Dan Mahan says I'll be accountable for this touchdown though, as he gets a touchdown to Caleb Gross. Dan Mahan must have seen how good Deshaun Ford was running the ball, so he tells Deshaun Ford to catch the screen pass and pad his stats as well as his own. And that must be the method, because he does it again on the next play. Deshaun Ford is now up to 80 receiving yards in the game. He's going crazy. It just wouldn't sit right with me if we didn't get a Dan Mahan deep ball to Jelani Watkins for a touchdown. Just wouldn't be right. After this, we put in third-string quarterback Brian Ridge, and we sim the rest of the game, and we take the win against FCS West 45-3. And looking at the passing stats, Drew Overton went 10 for 12 for 202 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also did have the interception. Dan Mahan went 10 for 17 for 167 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, no picks. But Dan Mahan did have 3 carries for 16 yards and a touchdown, so that kind of helps him out. Both quarterbacks played a great game, but I decided to keep Dan Mahan as the starter just because he has been here longer and there wasn't too much separating them as far as their performance went last week. Last year we upset another SEC opponent in the Mississippi State Bulldogs. This year's going to be tougher as LSU is rated in the 90s and we're still in the 70s. But I really enjoy playing against in-state rivals. I think it's a lot of fun. Dan Mahan puts together a pretty productive first drive, but ultimately it results in a field goal. And just a bit of history, because this does piss me off to this day. The Warhawks and Tigers played against each other in 2021. This was Coach Ed Orgeron's last year as a head coach of the Tigers. And this was Terry Bowden's first year as head coach of the Warhawks. And I'll say this to the day that I die, if we would have started Chandler Rogers that game, we would have won. This was that period after COVID where the LSU Tigers were just really not great at all, but we lost the game 14-27, and we really only lost because of a drop pass and a bad pass. And if Chandler Rogers would have been playing that game, those passes would have been completed, I'm telling you. If you're wondering why he didn't make the start, I just want you to go Google who was ULM's offensive coordinator in 2021 and who was their starting quarterback in 2021, and that will tell you everything you need to know. Back to the game though, we are currently doing very well against LSU. Our defense is holding up. We have to settle for a punt here, but I'm just shocked that we aren't getting completely blown out in the fourth quarter. Our defense holds up again, and Deshaun Ford has 2 big carries that get us up to the goal line. With 2.5 minutes left, we run the jet sweep with Caleb Gross, and he runs it in for a touchdown. We have the lead in the fourth quarter. 2 minutes left against LSU. That doesn't last long though, as they score a touchdown within a minute of us taking the lead. And we get so close to winning this game, but LSU's defense just sends so much pressure at us. Dan Mahan can't handle it. He gets sacked. We run out of timeouts, and on this last play, we didn't have time to choose a new play, plus it was 4th down. He tries to get the ball to Caleb Gross, but it's incomplete. We do lose a respectable game to the Tigers, 20-24, our first loss of the season. We're looking to get back into the win column against UCF at home, and punting on our first drive is definitely not the way to do that, and it's even worse when you have to punt on your second drive. At this point, I just have no comment. We absolutely cannot move the ball against UCF, but they aren't moving the ball against us either until they get a field goal. Deshaun Ford and Dominic DeLuca make 2 big plays for us because they're just tired of us not being able to move the ball, and they'll get us into the red zone. And Caleb Gross takes this slant for a touchdown. We're backed up on the 5-yard line, but Ashton Bethel Roman completely dusts his man, and he gets open for a 95-yard receiving touchdown. And again, if it's not Jelani Watkins getting open, it's Ashton Bethel Roman. They are just so good together. We kick another field goal to go up 14 before the half. In the second half, Dan Mahan forces this ball to Ashton Bethel Roman, and it gets tipped and picked off in the end zone. After a few more nothing drives, Dan Mahan breaks the tackle, finding Jelani Watkins downfield, and he makes a big play for us, getting it up to the 34-yard line. And on the very next play, Dan Mahan throws an interception, which makes me question why we chose him over Drew Overton. But it's plays like these between Dan Mahan and Jelani Watkins that make me realize I probably made the right choice, because they just have a chemistry like no other. As we come home with the win against UCF, 24-9, and that win must have impressed our visiting recruits, because we secure commitments from 2 3-stars, wide receiver Martin Cush and cornerback Nick Bueno, not to be confused with Nick Bruno. And after simming the bye week, we get another commitment from 3-star running back Tyler Laporta. And now we're playing a 57 overall Texas State, really Pac-12 material. And on our first drive, Deshaun Ford and Dan Mahan are just running all over him. Deshaun Ford getting a stiff arm, Dan Mahan making moves in the open field. Deshaun Ford gets another big 19-yard run, bringing it up to the 6-yard line. Dan Mahan's able to capitalize, hitting Jelani Watkins on a slant that honestly should have been intercepted, but he gets a touchdown. And it's always fun watching Dan Mahan throw the deep ball to Ashton Bethel Roman as we get another touchdown and go up 14. And last year, Jelani Watkins had a record-breaking 5 touchdowns against Texas State, and it seems like they haven't learned from their mistakes. Dan Mahan gets another touchdown pass to Ashton Bethel Roman, who then proceeds to just break the glass at Texas State. He doesn't care. With about a minute left in the second quarter, Deshaun Ford breaks 2 tackles to bring us up to the 10-yard line. Dan Mahan scrambles out left, finds Dominic DeLuca in the end zone, and it's just a bloodbath. After simming the rest of the game, we're leaving San Marcos with the win, 49-30. Texas State had 20 points in the fourth quarter. Gotta hand it to him for not giving up. Dan Mahan had 7 touchdowns today, which is insane. He breaks a single game record for passing touchdowns at ULM. And we're going into our rivalry game against the University of Southwestern Louisiana feeling very good. But the Cajuns aren't gonna make it easy on us as Dan Mahan throws a pick. And we have to punt on our second drive. We've got to start moving the ball, and Dan Mahan hits Frank Everett, our backup tight end, in
the middle of the field for a nice gain. Deshaun Ford continues to lean into his elite stiff arm as he stiff arms 2 defenders and gets up to the 39-yard line. The Warhawks aren't able to score a touchdown, but they do score a field goal, giving us our first points of the game. We get it up to the goal line on our next drive, and on 4th and goal, we go for the QB sneak, and we're unsuccessful. Then on the next drive, Dan Mahan throws a pick. Number 9 for ULL runs it in for 6. We're just kind of falling apart here. 4th and 10 on our 35, we have to punt it away. And we're lucky our defense is pitching a shutout as Dan Mahan finally hits Jelani Watkins for a big play downfield, something we've been looking for all day. And Deshaun Ford helps us retake the lead with a rushing touchdown. We are back in the game. He's just running around having a great time out there. And if we win this game, we really owe it to Deshaun Ford because he's been the only consistently good part of our offense in this game. Dan Mahan does throw a nice pass into a tight window to Caleb Gross to get us in the red zone. And of course, it's Deshaun Ford again running outside to get a second touchdown of the day, giving us a lead. Our defense is able to get another stop. Jelani Watkins gets us the first down on this play. We're able to run the ball a few times and then eventually just run the clock out by kneeling it. We take a really close win against the Cajuns 17-14, and we're proud of how we've done against them in the past 3 years. And I believe this is the first time in history that the ULM Warhawks have beaten the Cajuns 3 times in a row. And Deshaun Ford rightfully wins player of the game. He was our entire offense. With that win, we're able to secure a commitment from 4-star running back Ronald Robbins, our first 4-star recruit. We also get a commit from 3-star guard Nicholas Agasiva, and Deshaun Ford wins Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Week. We are halfway through the regular season, and checking out the conference standings, we're sitting at the top. 5-1 record and 2-0 in the conference. And our defense is playing elite. 87 points allowed in 6 games. Against Southern Miss, we look to keep that number 1 spot in the conference. They took it from us last year, so this is a bit of a revenge game for us, and I'm glad it's in the rain. Dominic DeLuca's glad too as he catches the first touchdown of the game. Deshaun Ford, surprisingly, finds himself in the end zone. You are not touching the field goal post. He will, however, find his way in the end zone again as he catches a touchdown. The field goal here brings the lead to 21, and this next field goal brings the lead to 24. And we have gotten our revenge on Southern Miss. We will keep the lead in the conference as Deshaun Ford had an amazing game, 162 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. The rivalry win gets us a commitment from 4-star corner Santiago De La Rosa. That's our second 4-star commit this season, and things are looking great for our future. Things are also looking great in this game against Troy as Deshaun Ford finds a lane, breaks tackles, and runs for a big touchdown. That's 72 yards. And in the second quarter, Dan Mahan finds Frank Everett for a touchdown. Deshaun Ford and our tight end group are putting in a lot of work today as Dominic DeLuca gets a big gain up to the 10-yard line. Ashton Bethel Roman finishes the drive off with a touchdown. Dan Mahan throws this ball up the seam to Caleb Gross, who breaks tackles from 2 defenders and tries to outrun him. He goes 78 yards before getting stopped at the 2-yard line, just barely missing the end zone. Deshaun Ford finishes the job, and our lead is now up to 25. At halftime, Deshaun Ford is already up to 120 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. That's why on our first play of the third quarter, we give the ball to backup Tremaine Ware, who takes this ball 75 yards to the house. That's his first touchdown of the game. And Troy just has no answers for our run game. Whether it's Deshaun Ford or Tremaine Ware, they're going to make big plays, which it feels good running the ball all over Troy because I had to watch in 2022 as Kamani Vidal ran for 242 yards against us. Even though I hated to see the Warhawks get torched like that, I couldn't even be mad because Kamani Vidal was just so fun to watch. Troy sends a blitz on this play, so I know that the middle of the field's going to be open for Jelani Watkins to get a touchdown as we take home the victory against the Troy Trojans 43-24. Deshaun Ford ends the game with 174 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Tremaine Ware added 111 yards rushing on his own on only 4 attempts for another touchdown. And we are going into this game against Arkansas State 7-1, and we're also ranked number 17 in the country. And historically, the Red Wolves have given ULM some trouble, but doesn't look like that's going to be the case today. Dan Mahan keeps trying the deep ball and throws an interception, but on the next drive, he tries it again and throws another touchdown to Ashton Bethel Roman. He throws his corner out to Caleb Gross, but it ends up getting intercepted. So on our next drive, he throws it again just to show that he can do it. And Dan Mahan throws his ball just behind Frank Everett enough to where he can catch it, but also behind enough to where the defenders couldn't. And how about Ashton Bethel Roman leading the way for this team? Another deep ball, another touchdown. He's going crazy. 13 seconds left in the half, and Dan Mahan takes this ball, he outruns every defender, and he gets in for a touchdown. On the next drive, we try a 56-yard field goal, and we doink it in for the score. And even after we simmed, things just did not get better for Arkansas State as we win a big game, 55-7. Dan Mahan, 410 yards, 6 touchdowns. The big win against the Red Wolves brings us commitments from right tackle Tony Carvalho and linebackers Marco Pujols and Alfonso Millie. The Warhawks are 8-1 going into this game against Georgia State, and again, it's all Deshaun Ford day. He takes it in for 3 touchdowns on back-to-back-to-back drives. As the clock strikes 0 at the end of the first half, Ashton Bethel-Roman gets open for a 77-yard touchdown, and it looks like Dan Mahan has a new favorite receiving target. So it makes sense on the first drive of the third quarter, he decides to show Jelani Watkins he still cares. He's still there for him. Dominic DeLuca gets some love too as we are up 42-7 at the end of the third quarter. We sim the rest of the game, and I guess we kicked a field goal, and we win the game 45-7. Guard Dom Lieber and edge Emmanuel Bello commit as we go into our next game against 5-5 Georgia Southern, and they must not have watched any tape on us because they don't know we love the deep ball. Deshaun Ford fights forward for a touchdown, and that tongue twister must have confused Dan Mahan because he throws a pick straight to the linebacker. What are you doing? And this is already another multi-interception game from Dan Mahan. I don't know. It's totally his fault. He's making terrible reads. He must have stayed up too late. If only there was someone controlling him that was making better decisions for him. I just don't know. After his third pick, we set Dan Mahan on the bench. We tell him, guy, you gotta cool off. We put Drew Overton in the game, but his offensive line is not giving him any help as we have to punt on his first drive. On the second drive, Drew Overton shows his accuracy by threading the needle and getting that ball to Caleb Gross. Tremaine Ware shows how good of a backup running back he is by making a few guys miss and getting it up to the 44-yard line. And I'm sorry if it gets repetitive that I always throw deep balls to Ashton Bethel-Roman or Jelani Watkins, but if they keep getting open, I'm going to keep throwing the ball to them. Drew Overton chucks a ball straight to Deshaun Ford's head, knocking him out. Not really, but we do kick a field goal, bringing the lead to 11. To make up for whacking him in the head, Drew Overton hands the ball off to Deshaun Ford, who gets a touchdown. We take home the win against Georgia Southern, 27-13. That's our 9th win of the season. 3-star left tackle Niles Leon commits to ULM. And this game against South Alabama will be Dan Mahan's redemption game after getting benched last week. And on this first drive, Dan Mahan looks like he's breaking no sweat. Neither is Deshaun Ford as he runs in for a 17-yard touchdown run. On back-to-back drives, we miss a field goal and then we have to punt. So even though Dan Mahan throws us into double coverage, it's amazing to see Jelani Watkins, who's 5'8", moss 2 defenders and then run it in for a big touchdown, 80 yards. Despite the slow start, our offense is clicking now as Ashton Bethel-Roman also gets a long pass completion to him. Jelani Watkins takes it in for a touchdown, and our offense finally has rhythm as Caleb Gross takes in a nice catch and Deshaun Ford runs it in for a touchdown. He's trying again to hit the field goal post. He's not going to make it. And in the regular season, the ULM Warhawks have gone 11-1, 8-0 in conference play. Wide receiver Jason Beatty, center Manu Madden, and linebacker Maurice Yuki all committed after this week. And we are in. We have done it. We're in the Sun Belt Championship against James Madison. Even though there are 57 overall, somehow they went 9-3. And for the Dukes, I hope that the stadium isn't too quiet, and that's why they lose this game. The negative stadium pulse must have gotten to them because they roughed my kicker. Get this guy out of the game. He's too violent to be on the field. Dan Mahan takes advantage, scrambling in for a touchdown, and the Dukes just have no answer for our run game. Deshaun Ford takes this ball 40 yards to the house. We are up 14-0, and tale as old as time, Jelani Watkins gets open. There's no safety help. At this point, you've got to wonder if these defensive coordinators for these Sun Belt teams are just not paying attention, or maybe they're just stupid. Who knows? I know one thing, and it's that they absolutely never learn. And I'm not quite sure that James Madison can blame this performance on the stadium being too quiet because it looks pretty packed and pretty loud, not to mention the fact that we just absolutely stomped on them. But for the first time ever, the ULM Warhawks are Sun Belt champions. And in the Sun Belt championship game, Jelani Watkins sets the Sun Belt career receiving yards touchdown record. We get commitments from tackle Milo Tafa and safety Eric Jarwin. Ashton Bethel-Roman wins Offensive Player of the Week for the Sun Belt with 7 catches, 206 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also winning National Offensive Player of the Week. Moving on, we get commitments from guard Frederick Droge and edge Josh Hicks, as our offensive coordinator Nick Coronado wins the Broyles Award. Austin Simmons of Ohio State wins the Heisman. And our very own Deshaun Ford wins the Doak Walker Award. We're so proud of him. And if you thought we were just going to get invited to any old bowl game, you were wrong. We are in the college football playoff against number 5 Tennessee. We have some tempting job offers from LSU, Missouri, and Purdue who want us to be their head coach and the chance to be the offensive coordinator at TCU. But we're declining. We're bringing the Warhawks to the Natty. Nothing is stopping us. And for the first time ever, ULM is in the college football playoffs. We start off strong with a long first drive that ends in a back corner touchdown to Ashton Bethel Roman. And Dan Mahan thinks he can connect with him again on the sideline, but he throws a pick. Our defense cannot stop Tennessee, but we're able to tie the score up with this long Jelani Watkins touchdown. They respond with the score and we have to punt it away. Our defense lets up another touchdown and we're trying to score before the end of the half to keep it competitive, and we hit Johnny Pitts for a long gain, which lets us kick a field goal, which is no good. He doinked it. Jelani Watkins proves that speed can sometimes beat skill by a long shot as he has another touchdown. But these aren't Sunbelt defenders, and Dan Mahan throws another pick. Tennessee just continues to score on us, and we have no answers. Dan Mahan overthrows Ashton Bethel Roman, and that's another interception. We're not giving up though, as Dan Mahan scrambles out right and throws his ball to Caleb Gross, who mosses a defender and gets a big gain. But Dan Mahan should just avoid corner routes for the rest of his career. He cannot hit them at all. Dan Mahan's 5th interception of the game officially ices it, and we lose the game 40-21. Still though, we had an amazing season making it to the college football playoff. Here are some more job offers that I declined, but next season we will have a new defensive coordinator as Deshaun Horn accepted my offer. Lincoln Riley, coaching the Texas Longhorns, beat Alabama in the national championship 41-34. End of the season stats for Dan Mahan. He threw for 4,026 yards, 38 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions with 69% completion percentage. Drew Overton was also really good when he got on the field, throwing 419 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a pick. Deshaun Ford went for nearly 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground. And Tremaine Ware was a solid backup, going for 407 yards, 7.8 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. Receiving is where it gets interesting, as Jelani Watkins brought in 41 catches, 1,141 yards, and 13 touchdowns, 27.8 yards per catch. Ashton Bethel Roman had 54 catches for 1,105 yards and 14 touchdowns, but Deshaun Ford led the team in catches with 77 catches, 652 yards, and 2 touchdowns, adding on to his 1,300 rushing yards. Caleb Gross again was solid with 45 catches, 523 yards, 5 touchdowns. Tight end Dominic DeLuca had 50 catches, 517 yards, and 5 touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Bryce Bowling led our team in tackles with 66. Matthew Zeke led the team in tackles for loss with 11. Theo O'Grady led the team in sacks with 3. And look at this. No one all year got an interception. 0 interceptions all year. Deshaun Ford is looking to transfer because of conference prestige, and Tyree Adams is projected to go in the 4th round of the NFL draft. Even after winning the Doak Walker, we are unable to convince Deshaun Ford to stay. And none of our defensive players that are wanting to transfer want to stay, but we are able to convince Angel Kukbala to stay, the freshman running back we got last year. And here are our last bit of high school commits and transfer portal commits. Offseason training results have Drew Overton at an 87 overall, as Dan Mahan is skill capped at an 81, so it looks like Drew Overton is going to be our starter next year. I just think as we face tougher competition, it's going to be harder to win with Dan Mahan over an 87 overall quarterback. 4-star transfer senior Greg Burrell is up to a 90. He's going to be a great running back for us next season. Tremaine Ware is up to a 78, and Angel Kukbala is up to a 75. Jelani Watkins stays in an 86, but Ashton Bethel Roman and Caleb Gross are up to a 79 and 78 respectively. Honestly, both of them should be in the 80s. I don't know why they're not. But speaking of being in the 80s, Dominic DeLuca is up to an 81, and Frank Everett's up to a 77. That's great for the sophomore tight end. And with the news that came out this past Monday, Louisiana Tech is officially in the Sun Belt, so I decided for the next season we are moving them into the Sun Belt to replace Texas State, who's now in the Pac-12. I also moved teams around to the Pac-12 to make it look how it's going to look in the 2027 season and beyond. But that will do do it for Season 3 of the ULM rebuild. If you enjoyed your time here, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to see the rebuild continue. Leave a comment to tell me how stupid I am or if I did anything wrong that I can fix. Again, I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you for watching.